Welcome to the Massachusetts School of Law Educational Forum. Thank you for joining us. This program is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law and is shown nationwide. The topic for today's show is the NHL. For hockey fans, hockey isn't a game, it's a way of life. There have been great players like Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, and Wayne Gretzky. Hockey has given its fans great moments. One of the most memorable is when a group of college students from the USA defeated the mighty Russian Olympic team, also known as the Miracle on Ice. The NHL has produced great teams such as the Big Bad Bruins, for which Derek Sanderson, Mike Milbury, and Ken Hodge played. And who could forget the high-flying Edmonton Oilers of the 1980s? Plus, hockey has one of the most successful franchises in sports history, the Montreal Canadiens. In an effort to get as many perspectives as possible, we thought it would be a great idea to get the thoughts of a man who knows the game, from a player's view as well as from management view. We visited with Michael Milbury in New York. Mike was a top defenseman with the Boston Bruins. After retiring, he progressed through the Bruins organization, from player to head coach of the Bruins affiliate, the Mariners, where his team captured the division title and he was named Coach of the Year. Mike then became head coach and assistant general manager of the Bruins, leading the team to division titles. Mike then became the general manager of the New York Islanders. Mike, tell us a little bit about the game of hockey. How has it changed over the course of your career, first as a player?
Well, it's changed in a whole lot of different ways, from the size of the players, who are so much bigger, so much stronger, so much faster than they've ever been, and that makes for a whole different set of rules for coaches to live by, and the coaches have adapted incredibly to the game, and now we're much more they're much more sophisticated in terms of positioning and technical play. Makes for a real challenge for an opposing coach when you come into a new building, and they've seen everything that you're going to do. And from the business perspective, it's incredibly different. It's there's all sorts of things that go on in an arena during the course of the game. Advertising, even here in this little rink that you're seeing, everything that you can possibly imagine on the sideboards, and of course the money is hugely different.
Do you think in any way it's becoming a game, or it's going to become a game of speed and size and strength as opposed to technical skill?
You know, we're facing a time now where teams have become so detail-oriented, and they play the trap, which is a real tight defensive system. I don't know how we're going to get around that. There's still a lot of excitement to the game. There's a lot of transition off this defense, but a lot of us are concerned about what it's doing to the flow of the game. So it's something that we're looking at, and especially with the new CBA around the corner, we're looking at it very intently in the next year or so. So
we'll have to stay tuned and see what happens.
Yeah, I think so. But every year there's probably 3 or 4 general managers meetings. Most of the managers are ex-players, but all of them are dramatically interested in the welfare of the game. And we're always looking for a way to make it better, and we get input from the players as well. So I think the game should be flow, excitement, and that's its roots. Its essence was on rivers and ponds, and where there was just an explosion of energy and speed, and the more we can keep that essence of the game, the better it is for all of us.
Do you believe that the fighting or the violence is an essential part of the games? Is that what viewers want to see?
Well, that's 2 different questions. I don't believe that the fighting is an essential part of the game. I believe that we've allowed it to become a part of the marketing aspect of the game. No other major sport allows it to occur in its field, and I don't think we need it. Other people will argue that this is a way to people police themselves on the ice. I frankly think that's a sales pitch, and I think we could easily do without it and make the game better because of it. But you know, I'm in the minority on that one, and I'm not that. I mean, I fought plenty of times when I was a player. It's not that I'm a pacifist in any way, shape, or
no
form.
Way.
But I think it's time to move on.
That's right. Let me ask you a somewhat related question. Hockey players are rarely in trouble with the law, or are in trouble far less than other athletes. Why do you think that's so?
You know, we've been lucky to in many ways, unlucky, I guess. The salaries have been low. They haven't been introduced into the fast lane. a lot of us that are very concerned about that. I mean, we've had a recent episode with a tragic episode where one of our players in Atlanta passed away, and it was a fairly innocent occurrence, you know, somebody driving a little too fast. But it's when you introduce the opportunity and all the money that comes with it, it's something that concerns me. But up until now, it's been sort of a down-to-earth group, and I guess maybe most of the time people are coming from Canada. 40% of our players are still from Canada, but it's a kind of an earthy game, and the guys are generally well grounded, and I hope we never lose that entirely.
I wonder if you might comment on the diversity now in the league. You said still 40% of the players are coming down from Canada, but where's everyone else coming from?
Well, they're coming from everywhere. I mean, we have people from Long Island now that are playing in the league. We have people from the Midwest, of course, and all across Europe. The Russian system, which seemed to be in incredible disarray 10 years ago with the political changes, has now somehow rebounded, and as they become economically more viable, a lot of these businessmen have poured money into the hockey system. So we're getting a real rebirth in Russia. Finland has always been there, and I think can produce more. Sweden has always been a great source of talent in the last 10 years. The Czech Republic, and Slovakia is an up-and-coming hockey power. They won the World Championship a couple of years ago. So it's nice to see that hockey is flourishing across some of these places. And one day, hopefully, we'll have an artificial ice surface that will introduce it easily to warmer climates. That's something they flirted with but haven't really quite been able to perfect.
Let's talk a little bit about the popularity of the sport. Why is hockey nationally less popular than other major league sports?
My opinion, the reason is that people don't play it in South Florida or Alabama. It's very expensive. There are no natural surfaces on which to play it. Ball hockey is a tremendously popular game right now, but it's not ice hockey. And to get a sheet of ice like this is a multi-million-dollar facility. So therein really lies the biggest rub, that people just don't have access to the ice surfaces, and the expensive nature of the equipment also is prohibitive. So that is going to keep us somewhat, unfortunately, contracted.
What advice would you have for kids that really want to make it in the NHL? Is it a realistic goal?
Every kid should have a dream, and if it happens to be in athletics, I think they should be able to dream that. I think that the first thing that you need to do is learn how to skate. My advice really doesn't go to the kids, it goes to the parents, where I think we've made a mockery of what we should be doing in athletics as far as hockey is concerned anyway. We've got kids that are 6 and 7 and 8 that are on travel teams, traveling around 2 and 3 hours to play a 15-minute game. I know there's some socialization that occurs there, but that could happen a lot closer to home and for a lot less expense. And I think if we could get more training into our early hockey programs, more training, less travel, less game playing, and then of course less nonsense among parents in the stands, then I think we're much better off. And some of the European countries, and we've always known that they've been much better technically. It's because they're trained more thoroughly and properly. They don't play as many games. There's not as much emphasis on the games. So consequently, as they get older and do play more games, they're better prepared. And I think that's something that we should all look at. And my advice to the kids in general is learn to skate, learn the skills, and then you'll get your game sense as time goes on.
A kid, though, that wants to make it in the NHL, all they can do today is play hockey. They can't diversify themselves into other sports.
It's a sad comment, really, for me, but specialization is here to stay, it looks like, and I think we just have to be careful. You can still, as a kid, play other sports, but the way things have been structured, if you're part of a program, it starts in September. It doesn't end until April. There's off-season conditioning programs that they want, summer hockey schools that they want you to be a part of. It's tough. I still think there's a little room for it. But like anything else, if you put your mind to it, if you have gifted with some natural ability, you've got a chance. But it's not something, professional sports is not something anybody can count on. This is your chances are remote that you'll make it, but unfair or unwise to dream.
And yeah, like you say, it's good to have a dream. Different question. Unlike other sports, hockey is much more reliant, in my opinion, on what I call ticket or gate income. What does that mean to the game?
The reason why is simple. We have never been able to expand to a regional or a national audience on a great scale. The game is difficult to broadcast.
Yeah.
There's a very small object of everybody's attention. The puck is not very big. It's tough to see it, as you'll note, or most people know. But once you go to a game, you can get hooked on the thing. But
Oh, sure.
the problem is that we have enough issues in sort of selling it to the public, I guess.
Somewhat related question. Do you think that hockey players now are going to start to look for the big salaries like other major league sports?
It's already there.
Yeah.
As a business, I think it's safe to say that the case will be made by ownership that they can't afford it. We're paying more money in many cases to players than football and baseball and basketball for their marquee players. It's not big money will come. It's big money is here.
Right. And hockey has a unique problem, as I see it anyway, that you have a lot of teams out there that are losing money, and you have expansion of the NHL, and how does that all play into it?
I think what happened here is that in the days of the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, really, I think ownership took advantage of players. Mm-hmm. I think there was a real one-way street, and it was not going the players' way. As the union changed, as times changed, the union became much more powerful, much more in tune, and the pendulum swung the other way. Now it's the players that are in control. And consequently, there's a lack of trust between the two parties, and we'll say something and they'll sneer, and they'll say something and we'll say, can you believe they don't understand it? Until we get to some sort of understanding of each other's difficulties and the fact that this is a business that requires obviously players and obviously the capital and the input of ownership, and that we're a partnership, we're in for a rocky road.
Right. So get on the same page.
Yeah, that's the answer. Mm-hmm. There's obviously people want to come to the game. We play to mostly full houses. As we mentioned earlier, that's where we get our revenue. So we've got something that people want to see, people want to watch on TV when they're familiar with the game. But we need to know that we need each other in this whole business.
Oh yeah, you look at Boston, you look here in New York. I mean, we love hockey, but that's not true everywhere.
No, it isn't true everywhere because they haven't been introduced to it, and for the other reasons, the lack of kid participation. But once you see it, once you're part of the action, once you actually get people to a game, you can really hook them. And it would be a shame if we couldn't find a way as players and owners and managers to come to some commonality without having a work stoppage for a length of time.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder whether the NHL would survive long-term some type of a lockout.
Well, no matter how we try to screw it up, the game keeps bouncing back. And,
yes, it does.
And it's great.
Let's talk a little bit about you. What was your experience? What has hockey meant to you? It's been your whole life, as I can see it.
I had a dream like all other kids, but it was at a time when you played football and you played hockey and you played baseball and basketball and soccer and everything else you could get your hands on. So as I headed off to college, I guess the dream was still there, but I was being a little more realistic about options as a professional athlete. But when I get out of college, I got the opportunity to try out for the old Boston Braves, and showed them enough to get me back to training camp in the fall. And then I got lucky enough to stick with the Bruins organization. A lot of it's luck, a lot of it's timing, a lot of it's hard work. I had a good fortune of having Don Cherry, who was a big supporter of mine, and Harry Cinder, who was a great friend and mentor, and who has always meant the world to me in terms of personal and professional life. He gave me an opportunity to get my career started not only as a player, but then when it was over as a coach and manager in Portland. So it's just sort of popped up. It was there, and I've been able to take advantage of it, and it's been a great life for my kids and my family, and been fun. Everybody sort of rallies around, whether it were the Bruins or now the Islanders. It's a way of sort of everybody getting on the same bandwagon. Even as a family, that's hard to do. So it's been a great ride for me. I've been privileged to be part of the professional scene.
You've done everything. What have been some of your favorite experiences?
From a hockey standpoint, it's been wonderful to get the chance to play with a group of guys. I mean, even in the minor leagues, which was a different time in the early 70s. When I played with guys like that you won't recognize, like Harry Shaw, Rick Pagnuti, who played from September until April and then went home, and they were truck drivers or mailmen or whatever the case may be. But when they came to the rink, they gave it everything. They gave me a lot of experience, a lot of their time, and we had a ball. I mean, the American Hockey League was a great place to get started. And then, of course, playing in a city like Boston. When I came in, we went to the Stanley Cup Finals my first 2 years, and Stanley Cup semifinals my third year. Too many men on the ice against Montreal in '79 was an incredible experience, despite the fact that it ended somewhat bitterly. But to be playing in front of the hometown fans for the Bruins of Harrison and Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, Jerry Cheevers fame, was a thrill in and of itself. The things that we did, the games that we played, there's too many to enumerate, but I'll never forget being in that old barn, even just standing there for the national anthem and getting goosebumps every time we came out on the ice. It was, the whole thing still is a little surreal for me, and I never ever forget how lucky I've been to be part of the Boston sports scene.
Joining me now is the NHL Rookie of the Year for the 1967-1968 season, Derek "Turk" Anderson. Derek is well remembered as one of the finest forecheckers to play the game, and for setting up Bobby Orr's Cup winner on May 10, 1970, with his pass behind the St. Louis goal. He played on one of the finest defensive lines in the game. Derek was also the first athlete from any sport to sign a contract in excess of $1 million. Derek, tell me how the game of hockey has changed since you've been a player with the Boston Bruins.
See, I didn't read these questions, but that's a good one.
Yeah.
The game is, I mean, vastly different, and if I can say, but it's really the same. When I played in the original 6 teams for Boston, and everybody was good. Two-way, positional, response time, you had no time to think out there. As expansion came in, it started to get watered down to the point defensively, not offensively. The skills have always been there. The goaltender's equipment has gotten a little bit bigger, and so the numbers have kind of stayed the same. And then the Patrick Waugh flop-style goaltending, shut-off lower, that started to creep in. Goaltenders have become very, very good. And there's been an explosion in that area of talent. Offensively, the Europeans have come in. The Americans have tremendous contributions in the Kachuks and the Stevens, and these guys that can play Barrasso in goal, and Roenick, and they're just tremendous talent. So expansion was something that had to take place. And I think somewhere along the lines, they forgot about the defensive aspect of the game, about both ends of the building. That's all. The players are bigger, stronger, better shape, but they're not faster. It's just the game is played at a certain speed. And I think it's a great game. My sons love it, and I've always loved hockey. And whether it changes, but it's kind of stayed the same. There's still only a few things you can do to get out of your own end.
A little bit of a different question. Has the NHL expanded too far? Have we diluted the talent pool too much?
When you bring in the Europeans, they're a very skilled offensive set of players. They are used to playing a schedule that is not nearly as long, so they have dreadful slumps sometimes. And then when it's moved up a couple of notches in the Stanley Cup, they haven't made that acclimation yet. The North American players and the Canadian American players have, but the European has to get there yet. And once that takes place, it'll be terrific.
Do you believe that the violence or the fighting is essential to the game? Is that what the viewers want?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hockey is not for everyone. I wish the National Hockey League would learn how to market the game.
Yeah. I
It is
agree.
not for everybody, Diane. It's a game that is a physical, it's a violent game played by violent people. And you're going to get hit. You know you're going to get hit, and you're going to get hit hard. You're going to bleed. You're going to lose teeth. Things are going to happen to you. And you accept that when you sign your contract. Fighting is a essential part. You have a club in your hands. Frustration, it gets to such a level when the guy's hooking you and grabbing you and slowing you down, impeding your progress, when you're not allowed to touch a player without the puck. And they would just call the rules, it would be terrific, but they don't. And so now a player gets frustrated, he starts to slash and spear and using the stick as a weapon. You're far better off dropping the gloves than having at it with fisticuffs. It's over, it's very aerobic, it's usually over in 45, 50 seconds. You're balanced on a 16th inch of steel off of frozen water. I mean, how strong can you be? So you're ripping guys. It's a lot of wrestling, but I think it gets out frustrations. That keeps the level of violence down.
Hockey players are great athletes, though, and I think we lose sight of just how talented a hockey player is.
I do firmly believe that. When you look at the NFL and football, as good as they are, the quarterback, the running backs, and the defensive backs, those are the skill positions. But most of it is just in the trenches, hitting hard, moving, and they don't go very far. Hockey is a game that is played by offense can hit defense. There's no out of bounds. There's no set rules. I don't have possession like in basketball. I give you the ball, except for the jump ball. I've got possession. Hockey, it's dropped. It's anybody's puck. So there's no set plays. It's a game of ad lib. It's an entirely different game. When the puck changes hands, and you don't have it, and the puck changes hands, your job changes. And you have to be able to read that. If you can't read that, I can't coach that. You have to have the sense for the game. If you don't, then you can go up and down the wall, mind your own business, and probably have an okay career if you're really talented. But the art of it is in understanding the game.
Why isn't hockey as popular as other sports? Is it that it is hard to follow on TV, that you really have to be at the rink to really enjoy the game?
Well, those two very good points. The puck is too small, even for TV. So when you, I remember they come up with that silly laser puck, remember that one? Okay. And that was in the stands sometimes, people going, but when you look at hockey, and the puck being so small, it's actually a game that you have to be there to feel the energy. I've watched it. I think they do a far better game today. They make it exciting today on television. ESPN's done a marvelous job, as does, and all the stations have.
Well, you did a marvelous job.
When we played, I remember what I did was the highlights of Bobby Orr. I was showing it to my sons one day, and my wife and I are sitting there. And I said, "Whoa, we look slow. Were we that slow?" And she said, "Yeah, it does look kind of slow." And I went to the game that night, and I spoke with Fred Cusick, who was probably the greatest broadcaster ever came down the pike. And I said, "Fred, is it really, we were that slow?" He said, "No. When you played, Derek, in that era, it was one camera game. It was at center ice, 30 feet off the ice, and it panned, and that's all it did. And so the downtime through center ice has now changed. They have 48 cameras now. They take a guy's hands, feet, bang, this player breaking, that player breaking, no puck. You don't see the puck half the time. And they take you through the, coming under your own end through center ice until you're around the net. Then they pan out and see some action. So it's actually the producer, the director, how they pick the camera, the shots, and they make it very exciting, and they make it look faster, but it really is.
So how do we increase the popularity?
I think you market the people that love it and the people that like it.
Boston fans.
Yeah, you just really pay attention to your fan base. Let the Bruins grow out and reach the community. Columbus, Atlanta, reach the community. Go out and street hockey. I mean, you got wonderful equipment for kids. Franklin Manufacturing has a whole line of street equipment. So you get the kids into street hockey. Then you get them onto the ice, and you get them feeling better about it. But the teams have got to go out to the community and take all of the suburbs and
Sure.
and those hotbeds with 31 cities. I mean, that's all you need. And market out from the building, and then starts to develop a fan base. The National Hockey League excludes its fan base. They go to general. They go to some ad, say, "Watch hockey, it's the coolest game in the world." Well, if I'm sitting in, Peoria, Illinois, I'm going, you get familiarity, get the players out in the community, start to market it.
Is hockey, though, accessible to most kids?
No. too expensive.
Yeah, it is.
It's an extremely expensive game. Goal pads are up to $1,000, $1,200. The gloves are state of the art now. Wonderful equipment. Kids are better protected than they ever were. Maybe more so. Not enough fluidity, not enough movement, not enough ability to get out of the way because you're so encumbered with equipment. It's a different game with the equipment in that aspect of it.
What advice would you have for kids in the audience that think, you know, one day I'm going to play in the NHL?
Well, that was a dream that I had. The Boston Bruins bought me when I was 10 years old. And it was professional rights for $100, and that's what they did in the old days. Follow your dream. If you're a young kid and you want to play, you've got to think it all the time, though. It isn't something you can do part-time.
No, not anymore.
You're not going to make the Red Sox
Right.
part-time. You're not going to make the Patriots part-time, Celtics part-time. You got to think about it all the time. Your diet, your decision-making, you're building your body, getting your rest, it's just all-encompassing now. Athletes today are in tremendous shape.
Yes, they are. Well, we're talking about players, something that I'm personally intrigued about. You think of hockey as being an aggressive sport, as a violent sport, but yet we rarely, if ever, hear about hockey players being in trouble, not like other athletes. Why do you think that's so?
I have always had kind of a personal opinion. I think it's hockey and all the campuses in the United States and all the junior teams in Canada, all the Europeans. Hockey is a game of humility. Hockey, I tell you, to play it, you're humbled time after time, shift after shift by other people's talents or jobs or just whatever. But there's no social set like on campus. Big man on campus in high school.
Yeah.
There's no cheerleaders. There's no you're special. But football and basketball in America is treated special. The athlete starts to believe that. He starts to walk around like he just owns everything.
Let's talk about Derek today.
First of all, that was the farthest thing from my mind was ever to be in the investment business. But when I was playing, and I was fortunate, as we spoke earlier about the free agency and the WHA and making all that money, I went to my lawyer and he took me to an investment firm and he got power of attorney and I was taken advantage of. Yes, I did a lot of foolish things on my own, but I didn't spend all the money. So it's gone. And I didn't want to have that happen to any other player, you know. And I did the Tucker Anthony Golf Classic, and John Goldsmith was the chairman of Tucker Anthony, and Clyde Fazioli brought me on board. And then John Goldsmith encouraged me to go back to get my Series 7, understand the industry. I did, and then I realized that it's basically an industry of all the money management, the brokers, everybody's pretty talented. What do you pay me? What do you charge me? And what do you give me? What do you do for that? And it's basically what I wanted to, a fee-based sports group. I wanted to protect the athlete, number one, from himself, number two, take him out of the hands of the Philistines, take him away from the people that would take advantage of him and overpower him. And so the athlete spends so much time on his game that he or she does not spend a lot of time on their financial life.
Right.
And I figured if I could be an agent, supportive, financial arm, and responsibly, prudently manage money and wealth, it would be an added service. And it was, I started it about 10 years ago. It's been extremely successful. I've moved from a couple of firms for services, and I started in the business with Jay Henderson, who's the president here of the investment side. Senior vice president. And Jay and I have known each other for 11 years, and I said to him, I would like to, talk about my athletes being here, because this is a wonderful firm to have your money managed. It's very simple, high service, high touch, high technology, but always a warm body. And that's what the players needed.
Sure.
Education, compassion, understanding, where they're not embarrassed to ask a question. They don't feel foolish about, mailing or forgetting stuff. You know how your bank or whatever, the bank, they get mad at you. It's my money, they get mad at me. I said, whoa, I made a mistake.
Joining me now is a Hall of Famer hockey writer, the longtime Lawrence Eagle Tribune sports editor, Russ Conway. Russ was a nominee for a Pulitzer Prize in recognition of his outstanding investigative journalism, and he was the 1999 recipient of the Elmer Ferguson Memorial Award as selected by the Professional Hockey Writers Association. He is the author of Game Misconduct, Alan Eagleson, and the Corruption of Hockey. Russ, welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
Delighted to have you here. Russ, you've been covering hockey a number of years. Tell us how the game has changed over the course of time.
The game hasn't changed. It's what's gone on around it. The business end is entirely different. The players are bigger, stronger, faster, not necessarily as skilled.
Yeah.
But the business part of hockey, as in all professional sports, is basically the engine that runs the locomotive.
Why haven't hockey salaries escalated like other sports salaries?
Oh, they have.
They're getting there, but still less than other sports athletes are
They've
receiving.
caught up. They really have caught up. I mean, you must remember that there are 30 teams. There are roughly 700 players that are on rosters, and each team also fields at least one minor league team. The overall salaries, which are the big bite, for the price of a ticket, are the single number one reason why tickets have absolutely shot through the roof.
People think, right or wrong, that hockey players are aggressive, they're fighters, but you never hear, or rarely do you hear, I should say, about hockey players getting in trouble. Why is that?
I think there's a real good reason for that. Most hockey players, their upbringing is either in a low class, low middle class income bracket. Mm-hmm. Very few hockey players are well-to-do when they first break into high school or college. Now,
right.
The same token, it's a very expensive sport to play. And these kids really have a work ethic. I think originally that is probably stems from the Canadian upbringing. I mean, for years in Canada, I mean, people were brought up to appreciate things. They remember their roots. That's one thing I like about hockey players today and always. If there's a tradition off the ice, they have been some of the most generous when it comes to charities and in community involvement.
Popularity of the sport. Why is it that hockey is not as popular as some of the other sports? Is it because it's low scoring, hard to follow on TV?
A little bit of that. They've really made great strides in their telecast. They went to Canada and basically took the work ethic and the type of production that they did in Canada, finally brought it to the States, and they've done a much better job with it in the last few years. But you must remember, by its own definition, there isn't a lot of ice in southeastern or southwestern United States. Now, the NHL, to Gary Bettman's credit, has slowly worked its way into different regions that had never seen hockey before.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, the Florida Panthers, I know when they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, South Florida went absolutely crazy for them. And they built a brand new rink. Whoever thought you'd see an NHL rink in Fort Lauderdale, Sunrise, Florida, another one in Tampa, brand new rink just come in Phoenix. That has brought more people to the game. There are more hockey fans today than ever.
But has the league expanded too far?
That's a great question. Sometimes I think it has, and yet in order to find your level, you've got to be able to see how far you can go.
We tend to think of hockey as a violent or an aggressive sport, so I have a couple of questions. First question is the violence and the fighting essential to the game? Do the fans really want to see it?
I cringe every time people say it's violent. The NBA, they have these bench clearing brawls all the time, and even in the NFL. And if you watch a Major League Baseball season, how many are there? I mean, you know, 20, 25 a season. I don't find it violent. Whenever it's a contact sport, and whenever you have two people going 25 to 30 mile an hour, and they crash into each other.
Is that how fast they go, Russ?
Sometimes
Wow.
20, 28 miles an hour on skates you could reach. And you know, you have a little disc, a rubber disc that you're winging 95 miles an hour. Some players can wing it up to 100 miles an hour. I mean, you know, some people are going to get hurt. It's not for the sissies, that's for sure.
Are hockey players, in your opinion, becoming too greedy at the expense of the league? Are they in it for just themselves and not considering the longevity of the league?
I don't think all players are like that. By the same token, all owners aren't like that either. You must remember, a player is offered X amount of dollars. And I'll use Bill Guerin as an example that played here in Boston. The owner of the Dallas Stars offered him a 5-year contract for $45 million. Now, what would you do? He'd be a fool not to sign that, to take it. That was a guaranteed contract. He took care of his family, his grandkids, his own kids, his grandkids, and whatever generations there are to come. The owners in some areas have been their own worst enemies.
What about revenue sharing? What can we do to have a better equity?
They have a slight revenue sharing program.
You know, they're a tough